when these lights go down and I'm a rolling stone. When the show leaves town and we put it on the road.
Politics, passion, pain, and persistence. You'll find it all in former Cape Coral Mayor Marni Sawicki's new book. The title of this book is Miss Mayor, How Republicans and My Ex-Husband Tried to Ruin My Life. Marni, the first thing I want to talk to you about, and I thank you for talking to me. The first thing I want to ask you about is the title of your book. The title of your book, as a conservative, I would have picked the book up and I would have lost interest reading past How Republicans Ruined My Life. But when you're talking about Republicans, and I spoke to you about this before, you're not talking about all Republicans. You're talking about a few of the what I call establishment Republicans, correct?
Absolutely, yes. I had quite a few. Actually, I had a lot of crossover and Republican support. So the title is a little bit misleading, but no, the ones that did go after me were absolutely the establishment Republicans.
Yeah, I want to talk to you more about that, but in your book, your readers are guided through a timeline of your life where you discuss events from your childhood all the way up to present day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You want to, what inspired you to talk about, bring your childhood out? I mean, does it formulate, is there some things in your childhood that's helped you to get to the place you are today as a woman?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My mother is a huge inspiration when it comes to politics. She's been involved, as early as I was able to walk. I could remember going door to door and helping her with candidate committees and all that kind of thing. But also coming from the abuse from the home. My dad being an alcoholic, and so we suffered that as well. And it kind of goes to the whole principle of domestic violence overall, because people who are involved in domestic violence as kids end up growing up and getting either perpetuating it, or they're either find themselves over and over in the same situation that they were in as a child. So
I didn't really see much of that about your father in the book, but now you grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan, and you was raised in a union household, which is something that I've never been in a union home. I grew up in Florida. Agriculture is not much call for a union. Do you believe growing up with the union influence in the home prepared you for the struggles of climbing the corporate ladder?
No. Not at all. Not at all. Completely different. As I went to college, I'm the first to go to college from my family and from my immediate family. And we, I'm actually the black sheep when it comes to that, because I have a lot of corporate experience. So, when we're talking with unions or dealing with unions in my own corporate structures, it's just different. There's things that you sit and go, and even as I was working at Kellogg's in the summer help, I was union, and I used to ask myself, I'd be like, well, I'm going to go over and help so and so with their mopping because I'm done. And the union would stop me and go, whoa, you can't do somebody else's job. You have to, go to the break room, change break rooms. And so I learned early on that was, the jobs are the jobs. And I actually had the same problem or same issues with City of Cape Coral, because I would drive behind and I'd be like, wait a minute, why are there 4 people doing the job of one? They're all walking behind it. And I used to ask those questions, but my mom and dad still to this day, they're like, you just,
well,
I understand they're there. There's also, we've come a long way, from when those days that they were really, really needed.
Right. Yeah, well, we all tend to rebel when we're growing up. Was you kind of the problem child at home, or
No. You know what? I have never gone with the grain. I've always beat to my own drum. It's something I'm just very comfortable doing. And no, I was a little, stir. I stirred the pot when I was growing up. Definitely.
Well, your personal life in the book is so intertwined with your professional life. Had you anticipated the multitude of struggles facing you as a woman excelling in the corporate world, would you have done everything the same way, or would you done something different?
No, I would have done it the same way. I mean, it's interesting because I think I always like to say we stand on the, as women, we stand on the backs of giants, right? We stand on the shoulders of those that come before us. And so, um, when I was in corporate America, for the most part in insurance, there were no women, really very few to mentor. So I kind of had to look at the men and go, well, they do that, I'll do that too. And then it ends up, being stereotypes come in. And so how I dressed, how I talked, all of those things were extra scrutinized, more so than they were with the men. So
Well, I want to go. I want to get on to that, some of that here later on in as we talk. But I wanted to go in your book. You was told us about your first marriage to Adam, and
mhm.
it seems that he was very supportive and devoted to you. What do you feel changed the dynamic of the relationship? Did y'all just kind of like grow apart? I mean, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, we were married for 13 years, and I laugh because I just saw him this weekend, and he's like, "You have to sign my book." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Everyone's calling me and saying, 'Why do you beat your wife?'" And he's like, "I'm the first, you didn't say my second ex-husband, you said my ex-husband." So I had to laugh. I'm like, "It's not you." But it was a matter of really just having kids. I think a lot of people can relate to that. You
Well,
have.
you and Adam had two children, and even after you decided to terminate the marriage, he joined you and the children on your move to Florida, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And
How does that work out? Because I can promise you, I've been married a couple times before. There ain't a chance in hell one of my ex-wives will live with me.
yeah, and Adam is special. He is, and I don't mean like special in a bad way. I mean he really is a good guy, and um, the we made a pact very really early that we would be amicable. That we would not talk about each other. We would not. The kids didn't need to know our struggles. They just needed to know that mom and dad loved them. So that's what we did. But yeah, we did move down together, and it took a lot of talking into though. The kids had to really. It was a really bad Ohio winter that actually did it in. He's like, okay, I'm out. We're good. We can go.
Uh, all right, professionally, by the time you took up residence in Florida, your resume was very impressive. However, you had been the victim of sexual harassment on more than one occasion, even sexually assaulted at one point in your book you just tell us about.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, in corporate America, there's always that. I was told I had to dress differently. I had a situation with one of my senior vice president where he was telling me that during one of our meetings that I needed to dress differently. That when he's looking at me, he's having a hard time looking at my eyes. And I'm like, okay, so I'm pretty sure that's you're supposed to look here, but um, it then transferred into I started as vice president of marketing. I traveled an awful lot, and so when I went to Minnesota for one of my agents, um, I was at dinner with him, and yeah, he sexually assaulted me. And I went to the police. I went to my CEO. The police wouldn't do anything. The detective was wonderful, but the DA wouldn't because it was across state lines. I lived in Florida. And my boss ended up taking away my client and giving it to another person. And so this person never had anything done to him, and he's still a very large agent making millions of dollars up in Minnesota. But I was one that was kind of punished for that and taken away my big account, and also commissioned for that too. But so that was, it was just a history of that. And I say that in the book about motorcycle riding. When you are taught to ride a motorcycle, you say, don't look at the side of the road because you're going to hit that object. And I think growing up, just going through therapy and traditional therapy, I should say, and trying to do all that, I ended up hitting those objects over and over again. And um, it wasn't, I think Kenny was my last time, this that I wrote the book about. He was
Right.
probably the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, I had to
Well,
go all the way to go all the way to show my kids that that's not normal.
well, now these experiences they had to make you a little more sensitive in the workforce. Did this cause you to question the intent of every conversation that you had with a man after this, with the
No,
obvious thoughts? No.
I'm a glass half full girl, so I try to not pinpoint, everybody to those categories. But obviously, in my personal life, I excelled in the professional, but in the personal, I couldn't quite get my arms around what is it that's good and what is it is bad, and when is it. It's kind of like the boiling frog analogy. You put a frog in warm water. When it starts to boil, it doesn't know to get out, and that's
Well,
kind of what it was.
in your book, you talk about when you moved into the South, okay? And one of the references, you made a reference to the vernacular of the Southerner, and you point out that in your words, your sassy Northern personality didn't fit in south of the Mason-Dixon line. Now, I grew up in the South.
Mhm.
I have never considered calling someone sweetie would be deemed offensive. I can honestly say I used it in terms of admiration or even a sense of politeness. I mean, a Southern man tries to be a gentleman. That's what he's taught. Like I said, if you've ever been into a Waffle House here in the South, you know what I'm saying? Every waitress is asking if you want more coffee, darling, and you gleefully smile and say, yes, dear.
Yeah. Yep. And again, that's perspective, isn't it? It's coming from where you're coming from, and from
No,
the north, the men wouldn't dare say that to us. They'd be smacked or whatever. And it took me a while to learn. My boss is like, just go with it. Go with the flow. And I ended up learning all of those, and actually calling people sweetie too. But it did take a lot to learn that.
that concept, and I've lived all over, I've been all over the world, and that concept to me is the hardest to understand because, if a woman comes up to me and says, handsome, I'm not going to, hi, gorgeous, I'm not going to be a bit offended because at my age, I'll take any compliment I get.
Well, actually, I will too now, but so that's okay. Um, yeah, it's as a woman though, we get it so often and we get it so much, and it's insidious. It's little digs, it's little things that are just said to us that aren't said to men that we are very, very sensitive to, and that still happens today.
Well, in
Okay,
this,
let me give you an example. Let me give you a great example. And this is not in the book. So I was in Washington D.C. at a mayor's convention, and after we got done, we all went to the bar at the hotel just to have a drink before we went up and kind of mingle a little bit. I'm sitting at the bar. I had a mayor come up, a northern mayor. I won't come up and sit down next to me, and buys me a drink and just starts talking to me. Well, it's a fellow mayor, so I'm just, intrigued. I'm asking him questions about roundabouts and things like that. And I get ready to leave to go up to my room. And I come up to the elevator, and here he is. And he says, I've got that book for you, because he wrote a book on roundabouts. He's like, I got that book for you. Do you want to just stop up and get it? And, instantly as a woman, I had to sit and go, oh God, go to his room? No, okay, wait, I'm strong. I can do this. I can do this. So I'm like, you know what? Okay, sure. So I go in and I stand right at the door. He goes over and he turns his iPad on. He's got the music going. He's like, what do you like to listen to? I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm here for the book. Like, just give me the book. And we ended up leaving. I ended up walking out and leaving. And Randy Henderson, the former mayor of Fort Myers, turns around afterwards. He goes, how'd you get along with the troll? And I go, the troll? And he goes, that's what we call that, mayor. And I said, so you let me sit at the bar with this man that you all know trolls women, and nobody said anything? And he's like, yeah, we just, we thought it was kind of funny. And I'm like, that's not funny. That's not funny. So that kind of
well,
stuff.
in this day and time, and I'm gonna be honest, when we were younger, there was a lot of places to go meet people and mingle to find dates. Then it went to internet dating, and that's basically it. But in my day, I mean, you really had to put out feelers like that to find out if a woman was interested.
Right. But he's married.
Well, that's an issue. I mean, I don't know. I'm old school, and I've spent a lot of time down in Mexico. I think they figured out if a woman accepts a drink from you, you got a right to do the crocodile Dundee move to make sure it's a woman.
Oh, you're funny.
But
No,
I just don't, there's got to be some type of common ground where when is it okay for a man to approach a woman? And I understand a married man should never approach a woman. Well, hell, I don't know. In this day, you got married couples all the time trying to get women to go to bed with them. But I mean, it's definitely different from my era. I can tell
yeah.
you.
And I think this just goes to, and I'll tell you, Joe, I don't mind being asked out. I don't mind having somebody, but when it becomes after the no, and then there becomes persistence, and then there's, it's still, and then what gets me is they get mad at you when you say no. That's the problems we run into there. I've taught my son what consent is. Consent is something that we always typically put back on the woman and say, the woman carry your keys to the car, or the woman should be responsible. Just like even my situation with my own ex-husband, I had people who told me, why did you stay? Or what did you do to deserve it? Or, those kinds of things. And this is today's date, saying these kinds of things. And, I just don't think that it's a fair, I don't know. I think talking about consent when a woman says no, or when you can just feel it, because you can feel it when somebody's not comfortable in a situation. We just need to have more of those conversations, and it, unfortunately, in Florida, it doesn't look like anyone's going to have those conversations anytime soon. Sorry,
Well, now,
I had to throw the plug in with the public school system thing going on.
uh, trust me, the school board knows my every move right now. They don't like me, and I'm glad of it. Uh, Now, on your decision to run for mayor, some people were encouraging towards you, while others told you that you were foolish and they didn't believe you had any chance of obtaining this position at all.
Right.
How did you deal with deciding to go ahead and pull together enough strength to go ahead and take that on?
Yeah.
Without a lot of support, that's a tough job.
And I think being in the PTA helped me out a lot, because I got really comfortable with Robert's rules, running meetings. I was president of the PTA for, God, a good 4 years, I think, while my children were in school, and then vice president, secretary. So I got to know how to talk to people and how, but the PTA and PTO, and of course it was at Oasis charter school. And just getting to listening to them talk about all their issues and the things they were having was really something that I'm a problem solver. So I'm like, okay, how do we solve that? And same with ACT. I'll be honest with you, how it really started. I volunteered with Abuse Counseling Treatment Center. I was a rape victims advocate. I'm one up here as well for the YWCA. Um, and I would talk to them, and I'd sit in these rooms, and these women would be like, there's nothing we can do. No laws are being changed. We can't get anything done. And I'm like, well, why can't we get anything done? They're like, because nobody's listening to us. And I'm like, then let's go change it. And so when I got into office, that was the first thing I did, was ask the Abuse Counseling Treatment Center executive director, what do you have that you want changed? What laws are there that need to be changed? And she says, yeah, we know those. We have those. I said, do you know where they are in the policy, into the actual ordinance, or anything that needs to be changed, and what wording should be there? Nope, we don't have that. And so I found really early on that a lot of the advocates that came in to talk to me didn't know where to start either. You know what I mean? To make these changes, to make these really critical changes for women, or not even just that, LGBTQA, all of it. And
Well, the truth is, establishment politicians don't want the advocates to understand. That's how they get away with so much.
it's a lot. And I will say that, every cause that comes at a politician, they can't take up every cause. They just
Right.
can't. But they can if you give them something to run with. At least for me, I was willing to run with that, right? Like, so give me what you need changed, tell me what you want changed, and let's go see who we can champion to do that. But it was really hard. They didn't have that, and I didn't have the time to sit down and make those changes for them. So
Right. Well, during your process toward the mayor's office, you were seeking endorsements and donations. You found your best support from local firefighters. And now this is where you met Lieutenant Ken Ratcher.
right.
It seems you felt an immediate attraction from what you say in your book.
Mhm.
And what did you have a magic Mike moment? And you just needed your own firefighter. I mean, what was the appeal here?
No, I didn't. Actually, it was a friendship that formed first. He was really part of my team. He came in and asked me just about different things. But he took a big interest in me. So it wasn't that I went after him. Um, it was just after the endorsement, we went and had dinner, drinks, and hit it off and went from there. I've never dated anybody in public service before, or public safety before. So he was the first.
Well, when you talk about this relationship, you said, and I say this, uh, we've all had situations when we like to take a test drive, so to speak, and maybe not really fully commit. I mean, with you and Ken, y'all had a few interactions, late night phone calls started to dissipate. Did this give you a sense that he lacked interest, or I mean,
Yeah, no,
what did you think?
he backed out of it. I didn't hear from him much. I'd hear from him just, when he'd hear a rumor or something. He was really good at, with the pulse of everything going on in the community. But now he went dark. He just stopped asking me out, stopped coming out, so coming over, and, asking me to go places. So I was busy. So I didn't have time to sit and worry about what he had going on in his life. I figured there was someone else, which it turned out it
Well,
was.
that's what I was going to ask. Did you not feel used or feel like there was something that he wasn't telling you in the background? I mean,
Um, no, because we weren't that. I mean, we were close, and we'd gone out a couple times, but we had not gotten into um, like what we did. Meaning later when we started fishing and doing things where I could talk to him, and he was like one of my best friends.
right.
That's where it started there. But no, I had no idea, and I didn't have any idea even. The first time I got the inkling that something wasn't right was after our restraining order, and he would not go back to the people who he'd said so much to.
Right.
He wouldn't go back and tell them anything he wasn't, what he'd said wasn't true.
Well, you had at that time you had no indication of further interest from Ken other than political. You just end up developing a relationship with Brian Riss, the owner of Stormsmart, correct?
Mhm. Yep.
And Brian, he had adorned you with lavish gifts and family trips. He seemed like a great guy and being a great catch for anyone.
Yeah.
But this would later come to be the focal points of many of your attacks during your campaign, correct?
Yeah, and none for him. None for him. He continued to get business ethics awards and business of the year and whatever. But with Brian, we just the same thing. We started to work. I came to visit him at his work. He wanted me to take a look and give me a tour, and him talk to a CFO and him. And so I was walking around looking at things, and he's telling me, and I'm like, well, what about this? And what about this? He's like, well, how do you know about that? I'm like, I have a business background. And so he ended up saying, I'd laugh at this because he would lean back. First of all, he thought I had an atrocious mouth. He's like, you swear like a sailor. And I'm like, and I will continue to. And so at the end of it, he kind of puts his hands back and he's like, can't believe I'm going to do this for the first time. I'm like, what? He goes, I'm going to vote for a Democrat. And I'm like, that's awesome. Fork it over. I need money for fundraising. And really, that was kind of the start of it because then it went to the Abishans and you know what I mean? Then it gave me access to people who wouldn't necessarily donate to me, um, but they would support me behind the scenes.
Well, while you were living with Ken, which he bought a nice new home for you and the children,
Right, right.
and then later y'all bought a condo together, or he bought it in your name. But however, while you continued your friendship with Ken, as you told us, you would take fishing trips with Ken, and you all this time you was dating Brian. Did you not expect some level of jealousy from Brian?
No, because you know what? Brian's pretty comfortable in the person he is, and he knew Kenny and I were friends. So, I mean, there would be every so often when Ken would call at on an opportune time, Brian might make a comment, but really he was just, um, he's pretty comfortable. So he didn't have a problem with it. And I was honest with him when I would go and see Ken or do things. So I just didn't feel like I was busy. I didn't feel like either one of them needed Do you know what I mean? I didn't have to explain it to either one of them.
Yeah.
I didn't tell Ken I was living, or Ken knew I was living with Brian. He didn't know um, anything else. You know what I mean? It was
So
really kept it
he
separate.
didn't know the shared property or nothing like that that Brian had bought. Yeah, okay.
No, I didn't go and tell him any, because really it was none of anyone's business but Brian and I's. And for the condo, I put 36,000 down, and it was really just because I had just become mayor and just started my own consulting business. I couldn't get a mortgage, but
you went back to Ken, and Brian eventually returned back to his wife. And so let's scoot on up to the night of the election. You defeated 70-year-old incumbent Mayor John Sullivan by 121 votes. Not only would you become Cape Coral's first female mayor, this would be the first time a losing candidate would contest the results of an election in Cape Coral.
Yep.
There's a lot of firsts there.
I know, right? And it continues to keep going. But no, he didn't even. It was funny because I knew that he did not have any idea that that was going to happen like that. I even put in there because we were on the Drew Steele radio show, and he had said, after I beat you, I'll date you, which is kind of ironic with anyway. But he did say it like that, and I was like, ew, no, no, no. But yeah, he didn't beat me and he didn't date me, so we're good.
Well, now you continued. You and Kenny kind of oscillated back and forth during your time as mayor, and his abuse elevated from mental, verbal to physical, and
And economic, as well.
yeah, and especially after your friendship with Sanibel Mayor Kevin Ruane began to flourish. He was very jealous of your situation with Kevin.
Very, very jealous. He was very jealous of anyone that talked to me once we started dating. It was a completely different Ken, and now I know why. Because when they say when somebody is jealous or something, they're usually looking their backyard, and he had been continuing to talk to Kirsten Thompson the whole time, so I didn't have any clue that that was happening. But yeah, no, he hated Kevin Rain, and he hated that he knew I talked to Kevin too, because I was front with that. Like, Kevin knows everything, he knows everything. So so did Lynn Peppinger from UC as well.
Well, now, again, you made a comment. People asked you why would you stay with Kenny, or what did you do to cause it. My question is I don't know that I understand you staying while he was doing while he was doing mental and verbal abuse to you. But when he got physical, that's when I don't understand you not, especially with children, not saying, hey, you can kiss my ass if you come back around here. I got a 45 and you won't be alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to say, so the kids were never around him. I did a great job of week on, week off is when I had my kids. When I had a structured agreement like that. And so the first time was our honeymoon that he had even touched me, did something like that. Then in my head, I'm sitting here saying, oh my God, I married this man. It's all over the news. What do I do now? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, this isn't, I don't know what to do. So I tried to salvage it out of humiliation. I don't know, just, yeah. I mean, he kept saying he was going to take my text messages and turn them over to people. And obviously, if your significant other, you share things with, right? So there were comments and things I'd made about people on the dais, about people throughout the community, to him and him only, that I just didn't need hitting. I felt like the walls were just kind of closing in on me. But it's not as easy when you love somebody, because he would do all of the things that I wanted for a man. Like, he was loving, he would give me gifts, he would listen, he was a big defender, and he'd come to my council meetings and be there for me. All of those things were important. And then with the spotlight, and that's where the Republicans come in, there were just so many that were keep the spotlight on her. And that's when I learned, I'd learned before, I should say, that that Republicans keep a book on anyone that's in office so that they can kind of see where they're going to go, and kind of, if it's a Democrat or someone they don't like, they go and forward and make and block them, right? They'll block their avenues so that they end up either being ashamed, or something happens to them, or that they just don't end up going after that position. But they used to do that a lot, and so I just panicked. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to come out. And they just kept the spotlight on me, and I have text messages and things online that show, they're like, keep her name out there, keep her name out there, just keep hitting her, keep putting her, look at her Google search, it's terrible. And it was terrible. And it did affect me for many years after that, where employers, even today, going to talk to someone, they're like, oh, I Googled you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you saw some things. I don't know what to do with that.
Even amongst all the controversy during your term in office, you was able to really champion a lot of advancements in Cape Coral and Southwest Florida, for that matter. Like during your time as mayor, one of the tasks that you started working on with Kevin Ruane was to clean up our waterways,
Yep.
Which, as a Floridian, we continue to work toward this until current day.
Yeah. Oh, you have challenges galore.
Right.
And it's not going to stop anytime soon. And that's where, John Sullivan, the previous mayor, he even balked at spending 15 grand on a marketing campaign for fertilizers to show that runoff, be careful of your runoff. It wasn't until I got into office that we paid that bill, because it looked like Sanibel ended up paying it for us, and then I ended up paying it back. So I'm like, that should have been paid. And just, we didn't know, as Cape Coral's an 800-pound gorilla. I mean, they are the largest city from Tampa to Miami. The fact that they don't understand their place, that they are, the county is scared of them, and should be, because if they got their act together, that city could rock. I mean, they could set policy, they could do all kinds of things, but the county likes it when they're small. Right? The county likes to keep those politicians small. And so they churn it all the time. And if they don't like the person, that if it's not a yes person or somebody that's in their camp, they will start turning that, because political discourse, political turmoil is always good for the county.
You was just recently in the area. Did you go over and visit Cape Coral while you were here?
Yeah. No, I went all the way over to Matt Lachey, and it's devastating. It just breaks my heart to see it. It breaks my heart even more to see and listen to people talk about LCEC and how bad the service restoration was going. I had a lot of people talk to me about LCEC, and to be honest with you, the city's screwed now. I mean, the city's screwed. They're stuck with LCEC from now until eternity, until the Public Utilities Commission gives them a different option. But they did away with the option to buy and all those things, that undergrounding, there could have been so many things put into that new contract that would have prevented having all of that damage. They'll go back and put new ones above going forward, because it's job security for those that are working at LCEC. So.
Well, I was going to ask, you brought up Oasis Charter School earlier. Mm-hmm. Okay, now you discovered a lack of accountability and a possible malfeasance at the Oasis Charter School. Is that when you feel like the little group that tried to go after you?
It's where it started. The turning of it did. Yeah. And that's so odd, because I'd met with Stevenson, the principal, in October when the audit first came out and showed how bad it was. I thought we had a really productive meeting. He had Rob Zatowski there, and they were just talking about, how can we fix this? What are we going to do going forward? I got an email that said, thank you for the direct and something conversation. It was very positive. And then 10 days later, I got something from NBC saying the principal is accusing you of harassment, of job harassment. I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about. I really don't. So I started with that. And again, it's like, look over here, right? They put up things on posts, the mayors, and I get it, because my son was working at the school, or living, going to school there. So he would get the messages that would be sent out and he'd send them to me. Mom, here you go. Here you go. And they would be like, come save the school. The mayor's trying to take over. Like I had everything else to do. I wanted to be a principal too. No, but no one could quite understand it. I guess once they got riled up, I just couldn't get anybody off of that to talk about the problems. And the problems are not solved at all, still today.
Well, now, this group that went after you, I want to talk about them a little bit. There was several people, and some of the players are current today. One of them was Sam Fisher.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I got a question about this. Do you feel that Sam Fisher wanted to target you to divert attention from all the financial problems or to hide any malfeasance that he might have been engaging in or the group?
I have thought about this a million times. They knew. See, my problem is you can be ignorant of something. You can say, I don't know that happened, whatever.
Yeah.
But once you know, then it's your responsibility to fix it. And as a governing board member, that's something the city did not do. The city doesn't, even to this day, have any oversight over that committee. So they can appoint them, but they cannot do anything to them. And that was not changed, and that's wrong. And so, when the principal, it came out, they knew they had got the audit that showed 18 findings that had to be, majority of them had to be reported to the state. And Sam was along with the other board members, which was Jessica Cosden, part of that. They gave 2 votes of confidence to the principal during this time. And it was unbelievable to me that was happening. But it was like the louder it got on social media, the less people started listening. And I think I mentioned that in the book, is where I say when emotions are high, intelligence is low. And that's kind of what happened the whole time. I wish I could have gone back, and I wish I would have known that then, so I could have maybe backtracked and maybe brought down the intensity of it so that we could actually have some good dialogue. But that didn't happen. And for a reason, I think Sam and all of them, they go on and they're the part of the deplorables on the social media, and they'd all stand there proud with the principal. I'm like, how are you proud that the $1 million is missing from the fund? And the city is having to make up the difference, because this is when they came and asked for $100,000 out of our general fund. And I'm like, it's supposed to be, we didn't have to pay it because we already pay a millage. So you shouldn't have to pay twice. And then the city agreed. And then now that's what I just a couple years ago, they wrote off all their debt and wrote off their buildings and everything. I wouldn't have. I would have given, I'll be honest, I would have given the school to Lee County.
Well, now, it seems like, from what I read in your book, it seems like that Sam Fisher and this group tried to do like a bait and switch. They wanted to try to keep your personal life in the media so that it would keep attention off of what was going on with them. Do you feel that's what happened? Because there was a lot of bad press on you.
Absolutely. And there's actually Sam and Kirsten Thompson and all of them are in there saying on social media, saying, keep it on her, and it was really the bait and switch. Look over here, because this is what happened. I don't know who all benefited from the money. I don't think we will ever know. They did do a police investigation, but because there's no policies, procedures, they couldn't really hold anybody accountable. That same investigation had happened 5 years prior. No changes had been made then. And so, again, we're sitting here with a school system basically called Frankenstein running through the streets, not without any accountability. And I know the new principal of that, and I like Kristen. I like the new principal, or the principal that kind of came up, and I guess she's superintendent now. I like her, and I think she does a good job. But again, I don't know what changes. I hadn't seen any changes be brought forward, and if they have, I haven't seen that. So,
well, and talking about Sam, I said that the REC targeted you. We talked about that you feel like the little group of the staff targeted you, but at that time, was Sam even a Republican at that time?
No, he was a Dem, but it didn't take. He started to hang out with Richard Leone and with Raina, and that's when it changed. And so did, and Jessica did too, but Jessica didn't change her party, but she was also very weak and did not, she just wasn't able to stand up for herself or for the city in that instance.
Well, did you know Sam, his wife and children? I mean, were you familiar with them?
I I only met his wife, so I tried to go back and find if I I haven't met. I've never seen his kids, so ever.
Never said he didn't have it. I mean, he was working in the position at the school. You'd think his children would be around. I mean,
Yeah, you'd think they'd be, and or he'd bring him to events or whatever, and he didn't. So I did not know he had kids. Did not know he had kids until he was running for school board, and that's when I was like, okay, so I'm not sure. And again, he could very well, and maybe I was just misinformed, but
uh, yeah, it does. There's a little odd speculation there. I won't make no accusations, but it's
yeah,
there's,
I did not see his wife never came around either. He maybe brought her to like one event. Um, she seemed nice, but I don't know. But Sam, in my view, so let's go back to, because when I was running for office, Sam followed every politician around and would be at all of these events, creepily be at all these events. You just turn around and he's there, turn around and he's there, and um, he just it was an awkward. I was surprised when he was running for school board and winning, because there was just an awkwardness there. But again, he was in the part. He was one of those right in there with Richard Leone, and he was one of those that was pressing Kenny, my ex-husband, to go public on me. And he said he worked for some attorney or some. What did he do before all that? He did something that he was an attorney. And he helped all this corruption. So he told everybody he knew what corruption looked like, and that it was me. But yet he had all this corruption at Oasis that he obviously couldn't see. So I was a little surprised at that. But he would just show up at all of our events. It was really odd.
yeah. I mean, it seems like he's the same guy today that he was all those years and those couple 100 pounds ago. Because Sam wasn't no small man back then, not the size he is now. I mean, there there there's three less Sams today than there was back then.
And good for him. Good for him. I wish I could do that too. So I'm not gonna hate on a man for that, but or hate on anybody for that. But um,
But the reason I'm saying is Sam, we just had a school board meeting a week ago, and the vote was that there had been an investigation, and they found reason that a seated board member had done wrong, and Sam and them pushed to just send them for what do you call it? Just go have them take some bullying classes and things like that. I I totally look. I know what's going on in the Lee County School Board more than they do, and before this school board, I knew that somebody had already paved the pathway, and I announced 4 days before the vote that Armored Persons and Sam Fisher would be the chair and the vice chair, and that's happened. If that is that dirty now, it had to be worse back when you were there. It had to be dirtier back then.
well, let's just go back and talk about Manning when he was done running. So Kevin Ruane wanted to be county commissioner, and it was agreed by the REC that Kevin was going to be the one successor to Manning. And um, so that election came up, and you see Kevin withdraw, right? And he said that his wife was sick, whatever. I'm not going to go into that piece of it, except to tell you that that's when Manning changed his mind. He decided he wanted another term. So that is why Kevin backed out, was because he wanted to. It was arranged and orchestrated. So when Kevin decided to, when he was up for his position, when he was donned, here, we're going to let you be county commissioner. That's when he was able to raise 500,000 within, I mean, a month. I think it was. It was ridiculously short period of time, but that's how it works in politics. I mean, if you're not, and I don't say always, because you can buck it, but if you have, and Lee County does, Lee County has a huge network of their politicians and in who is in their circles, and they determine who the next county commissioner is. I hate to say that your vote doesn't matter, but your vote kind of doesn't matter because you don't get the options that you would normally get because they're already decided who those options are. And it was even to the point where Brian Riss was going to run for county commissioner, and somebody went and spoke to him to tell him not to do it, that he'd already chosen somebody. And so Brian didn't enter the race.
I'll tell you, I really enjoyed this part of the show. Now, before I close out our interview here, I want to ask you, now there was a lot of accusations of who you've had relationships with. And it was, I mean, even Kenny was calling Brian Riss your pimp. I mean, it was very bad.
Yep.
Did you actually have that type of relationship with Kevin Ruane?
No. Kevin was my friend. He's just a good friend. He was a good friend. Kind of got caught in the crosshairs of all that too.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because, you know, in the book, you even admit Kevin had a key. So, I mean, you know, that's, you know, I heard a lot of stuff and I wanted the truth to come out. I'd rather the truth be there than somebody make up something for clickbait.
And that's why I wanted to write the book too, because that 911 call, you know, people were like, what? Why did that happen? And I was petrified because Kevin, you know, it was that Halloween night. I had turned my phone off and both Lynn and Kevin were like, where are you? You know, we know he's there. What's going on? Are you okay? And I didn't answer. And so she, being the busiest night of the bar night of the year, she's like, Kevin, can you go check? And so he did. And that is what caused the confrontation. And that is what caused Kenny to call 911. Nobody knew that. I tried to keep that quiet. Kevin tried to keep that quiet. Obviously we didn't want to bring him into something of my mess. But he was a really good friend. And it's sad that I had so many friends. I mean, even Brian today, I spoke to him probably a year and a half ago. Kevin probably a year ago. I keep track. Jim Birch I still talk to. But yeah, no, I didn't have that. But everyone liked to accuse me. But I'll tell you something else, Joe. I was single. So the fact of who I wanted to see and date, if I wanted to date 5 men at once, I could have dated 5 men at once. It should have been no one else's damn business. But of course, that's what they did. As far as married people go, that's if they're married and I'm not, shame on them. But Brian was going through a divorce. He had actual divorce. It was just taking forever because of the valuation of the business. It was taking forever. And I was just getting impatient with just having his ex-wife in his life, right? It was just getting to be awkward. But I do want to say, if it's okay, I do want to talk to you just really quick about domestic violence. People don't understand how much this happens and how prevalent it is. It is now moved up to 20 people. I wrote down this statistic just so I could give this. 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner. 20 people per minute in the United States. It used to be like 1 in 4. Now it's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will suffer some form of intimate violence in their relationship. 1 in 6 and 1 in 7 will actually have brutal, you know what I mean, where they're strangled or beat or things like that. So, and it's something we just don't talk about. And even now, when it gets brought up, they're like, "Oh, I'm not comfortable." But nobody stepped in. Nobody told me. You know, my parents didn't, and they regret that. But it took its toll on my kids. It took its toll on me, and trying to juggle Luckily, I had the professional experience I had because that's the only thing I could keep together. I was trying, I should say, tried to keep together was my professional life because everything else was a mess. And so I felt if I could just keep going and digging into the professional piece. But after the restraining order and then I got married, it just all blended together and I had no idea what was being said. I like to say they took a picture and cropped me in. You know, they came up with their own idea of how things were. And they said, this is how it is. She's doing this. Instead of having some compassion and empathy. And so I've had a lot of women reach out to me and say, thank you for having this conversation, because there's a lot of people, men and women alike, that are very alone in these situations. And it's worth it to their friends to reach out. It's worth it to their friends to talk to them. Um, I will mention this. I know everyone, I am a concealed weapon owner, so I carry, but it is proven that a presence of a gun in a domestic abuse situation is leads to 500% likelihood of homicide. More than, I mean, it's crazy. That's
Well, Marnie, I just want to tell you, if somebody's beating on my daughter, I want that to be one of the statistics, and I want her to blow his ass from one end of the house to the other.
yeah.
And my belief is your rights end where somebody else's skin
Yeah.
begins.
But you understand, a lot of the women don't have the guns. It's the men that do. And so if there's a gun in the household, the first 2 weeks of a woman leaving, they are 500% more likely of being murdered. In Florida, half the women that of homicide in Florida are at the hands of an intimate partner. That's crazy. And that's something that nobody's talking about. And it should have never been put back on me. And I guess that's where I want to say to anyone who's in that situation right now, it's not your fault. Just don't put your hands on people, right?
That's a great message. So are you done? Are you done with toxic men?
I am done with
Completely, right? So do you have political aspirations for the future?
Yes, I do, actually. And I'll tell you, but I'm sure there's heads going to be rolling or popping off when I tell you. But nope, I plan to announce I'm going to be running for governor of Michigan in the
She
2020.
just announced it, folks. You heard it. She just announced it right here. Marni Sawicki is
I just took my gubernatorial committee training last week, and so starting to put together my committee now. And between my sorority sisters, my mom, everybody else, this is my home now. And I loved it. I fell back in love with it. It's kind of what I left it for, plenty of years, about 20 years, came back, and it is truly a gorgeous, gorgeous state. And so I'm back in. I miss serving. I miss helping people. I miss doing that. But I don't want to be in the Senate or Congress or House. I just don't want to mess with that, because I'll tell you what, I'm going to get in, and then 2 years from then, both Democrats and Republicans will be coming after me, because I don't do very well being told what to do. And I certainly like to think on my own and have my own opinion, which is, I think, the appeal that happened when I ran for mayor, because there was just such crossover, because it really is common sense, or it should be. I don't know how others come up with theirs, but I would make my decision, and then I'd have to go look it up to see what side it is, because I'd be like, oh shit, who's coming after me now? Like, which one's coming after me? And it would surprise me to find, that I would be on the Republican side a lot. And that's just because I think because of
it seems like your attraction to men's on the Republican side.
and even now, the person I'm dating now is a staunch Republican, 2-time Trump-voting veteran, 6-year Army veteran. So,
when you get to be mayor, when you get to be governor, I'm gonna hunt you for an interview again, okay?
You do that. And
Marnie's book right here, Miss Mayor. I can tell you, no matter which side of the aisle you're on, this is a good read. I really suggest you'll find a lot of information. She speaks a lot on domestic violence. If you're going through something, I think that Marnie can really put some insight into what she went through to help others. Maybe they won't have to get it so far. Marnie, thank you again, and I wish you great success in whatever you do in your life.
Thanks, Joe. And I love your show. I think this is awesome. And I love the title. I just love the title of your show. It makes me laugh and chuckle every time I see it. So great job. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Marnie.
Thank you.
This is Smokin' Joe from Cracker Culture, the podcast for real Floridians. I love you, Florida. Love, peace, and gator grease.